The plane drifted through the night sky, the soft hum of the engines a steady backdrop to the fragile, unexpected intimacy growing between Emma and Ethan. The cabin lights had dimmed, leaving everything bathed in soft shadows. Most of the other passengers had fallen asleep or were lost in their own thoughts, but Emma and Ethan remained awake, two restless souls tangled in conversations that neither of them had seen coming. Lily slept soundly, her tiny hands wrapped gently around Max's thick fur. The German shepherd lay still but alert, occasionally lifting his head to glance around before settling back down, his instincts sharp even in slumber. Emma found herself watching Ethan when she thought he wasn't looking. There was something so impossibly sad in his eyes. He carried a heaviness she recognized all too well, a man who had seen too much, lost too much. And yet there was warmth too, something kind and rare beneath the guarded expression he wore. Like armor, they spoke in whispers, their words soft and careful. "Do you believe people can really start over?" Emma asked quietly, her voice barely above a breath. Ethan exhaled slowly. He hesitated, then gave her a rueful smile. "I think people try. Some succeed. Some carry the past with them no matter how far they run." His words landed heavily in her chest. She thought of her own life, the dreams that had burned away, the promises broken, the coldness of her ex-husband's absence. For so long, she had been drowning in loneliness, buried beneath the weight of Lily's illness and the unbearable fear of what lay ahead. But here, in the quiet dark, with this stranger who somehow saw her without judgment, something in her heart stirred. Something she thought had died. Her fingers brushed against his on the armrest. A simple touch, accidental, yet neither of them moved away. Instead, their fingers stayed soft, trembling, deliberate. Emma's breath caught. Her pulse quickened. Ethan's eyes searched hers, as if silently asking for permission. She gave the faintest nod, barely perceptible, but enough their lips met. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, the kind of kiss that came from two people who had forgotten how to be touched with gentleness. His hand rose, brushing her cheek with the lightest touch. Her breath hitched in her throat as her heart cracked open in a way it hadn't in years. For a moment, the world outside the plane ceased to exist. The grief, the pain, the fear, they all fell away. There was only this warmth, skin, breath, and the dizzying feeling of being alive. When they finally pulled apart, both of them sat in stunned silence. Emma's fingers trembled slightly as she pressed them to her lips. She felt alive. She felt terrified. "I'm sorry," Ethan murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I shouldn't have." "No," she whispered, her eyes shining. "I wanted to." He exhaled softly, his hand still lingering near hers, but the moment shattered. When the overhead speaker crackled to life, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We've been alerted to a minor technical issue. Out of an abundance of caution, we'll be making an emergency landing shortly. Please remain calm." The cabin stirred as passengers roused from sleep, voices hushed with confusion. Emma's heart skipped a beat, her mind racing to Lily. She checked her daughter, who remained peacefully asleep. Max at her side, fear clenched in her chest, not for herself, but for the fragile life of the child who had already suffered far too much. But while Emma focused on Lily, Ethan's attention was pulled elsewhere. His phone, long ignored, vibrated against his thigh. He glanced down. One message, short, cold. "We know where you are. You can't run from this." His blood turned to ice. The past he thought he could leave behind had found him. Ethan's breath quickened as he locked the phone screen without responding. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He forced himself to glance at Emma, her beautiful face etched with quiet concern as she gently stroked Lily's hair, unaware of the storm brewing not just outside the plane but between them. Warmth of their kiss still lingered on his lips, but already the weight of the secret he carried threatened to suffocate him. He wanted to tell her the truth. He wanted to warn her, but how could he? How could he confess that he wasn't the man she believed him to be? That the danger wasn't just mechanical failure or bad weather, but something far darker, something tied to his own unforgivable mistakes? As the aircraft began its slow descent, Emma reached for his hand again. He took it, his fingers curling around hers tightly, as though he could somehow shield her from the truth waiting to crash down around them. Neither of them knew that the real danger was not the emergency landing. The real danger was the betrayal that was yet to be revealed. The plane soared steadily through the sky, the hum of the engines masking the quiet, private world unfolding inside the cabin. Emma sat with her head resting lightly against the window, her fingers brushing Lily's soft hair as the child slept. Peacefully with Max, the German shepherd, curled faithfully at her feet. Across the aisle, Ethan shifted in his seat, stealing glances at the woman and the fragile little girl beside her. Something about them stirred a place deep inside him that he thought he had buried long ago, a place of warmth, of tenderness, of heartbreak. Their eyes met again. Emma offered him a faint, tired smile. He smiled back, hesitant at first, then warmer. "Thank you again." "For earlier," she whispered softly, her voice just loud enough to carry over the quiet cabin. He gave a small shake of his head. "You don't need to thank me." Anyone with a heart would have done the same. Emma let out a soft breath. Her eyes dark with exhaustion and something deeper. You'd be surprised how often that's not true. A pause stretched between them, filled only by the occasional rustle of paper or clink of glasses from the flight attendants. The intimacy of the moment was undeniable. Two strangers, sharing a fragile connection suspended miles above the ground. "I'm sorry about what you're going through," Ethan finally said, his voice gentle. "Your daughter? She's very brave." Emma's throat tightened. She swallowed hard before answering. "She is. Braver than I'll ever be." Her words hung heavy between them. She didn't often speak this openly with anyone. For years, she'd carried the weight of Lily's illness alone. Her marriage had crumbled under the pressure her husband, unable to cope, had quietly disappeared from their lives months ago. Since then, it had been just her, Lily, and Max. Perhaps it was the altitude, or the wine, or the overwhelming sadness that had been locked in her chest for too long. But something in her began to spill open. "I used to believe that life made sense," she murmured quietly, her eyes far away. "I used to think that if you were good, if you tried hard enough, life would, I don't know, reward you." But then, her voice faltered. Ethan's gaze softened. "And then it doesn't." She looked at him, her heart quickening slightly. Yes, exactly. For the first time in years, someone understood without her needing to explain. There was no pity in his eyes, just shared sadness. Emma leaned back in her seat, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment. When she opened them again, she asked, "What about you? Where are you headed?" Ethan hesitated. His face clouded, his jaw tightening for just a second too long. Nowhere special. Just away. Emma tilted her head, sensing the evasiveness but too tired to press. "Running from something?" she asked gently, her lips curving into a soft, sad smile. A faint chuckle escaped him, but there was no humor in it. "Aren't we all?" The cabin lights dimmed as night settled over the plane. Lily stirred once, half awake, murmuring her mother's name. Emma soothed her back to sleep, her touch gentle, maternal. Ethan's heart clenched unexpectedly at the sight. They fell into quiet conversation, the kind that deepened with each passing hour. Emma shared fragments of her life, the struggles, the loneliness, the small moments of beauty she clung to even in the darkest times. Ethan, in turn, offered only glimpses of his own story. Former Air Force, loss, regret, but he was careful, guarded. His answers were like broken puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit together. What he didn't say was this: he was running from a mistake, from a betrayal he had committed, one that had cost him everything. As the minutes blurred into hours, Emma felt her walls slowly crumbling. The way Ethan listened, truly listened, stirred something deep inside her. She hadn't felt this scene in years. When her hand brushed his by accident on the armrest, neither of them moved away. A tiny spark, quiet breath, the softest beginning of something neither had expected. But outside the plane's windows, thunderclouds were building in the distance, and within Ethan's pocket, his phone vibrated with a message he hadn't yet seen, a message that would change everything. The late afternoon sun poured golden light over the bustling airport as Emma knelt down to adjust her daughter Lily's pink woolen hat. The child's pale skin and hollow cheeks told their own quiet story, a story of hospital rooms, whispered prayers, and the heavy weight of time slipping away. Beside them stood Max, the large German shepherd who rarely left Lily's side. His deep brown eyes scanned the crowd as if he understood the importance of this trip. To Lily, Max wasn't just a dog, he was a protector, a best friend, and a constant comfort in a world that had been cruelly unfair. Emma clutched Lily's tiny hand and the leash in the other. Her heart was pounding as they stepped closer to the boarding gate. This trip had been Lily's wish, her dream, since she first saw pictures of the ocean. The doctors had quietly told Emma to make the most of the time they had left. And Emma, despite her own crumbling world, had promised. The boarding attendant smiled awkwardly as she scanned their tickets, casting a quick glance at the dog. Emma had prepared all the paperwork. Max was a certified emotional support animal. She could feel the curious stares of the other passengers as they made their way down the narrow jet bridge. Some faces softened with understanding when they saw Lily. Others frowned. And then it happened. At the aircraft door, the pilot, a tall man with a stiff posture, stepped forward. His voice was calm but cold. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Animals of that size are not allowed in the cabin without prior special authorization. We can't have this dog on board." Emma's stomach twisted. "Please. He's an emotional support animal. My daughter, she's very ill. We have all the documentation." "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. The pilot's expression barely changed. "I'm afraid regulations." But before he could finish, a voice from the cabin cut through the tension. "I'll take responsibility." Heads turned. A man in his mid-30s stood from seat 12A. His features were sharp but worn, messy brown hair, a hint of stubble, eyes that looked like they had seen far too much. There was an unspoken authority in his tone, the kind that made people instinctively listen. Emma blinked in surprise as the man calmly approached. "I have no problem with the dog. Let them stay. If there's an issue, I'll sign whatever you need." For a moment, the pilot hesitated. Passengers whispered. Someone coughed. And finally, with a muttered sigh, the pilot relented. Emma exhaled in relief as she led Lily and Max down the aisle. They settled into seats across from the stranger. She looked over, trying to find the right words. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded. "I'm Ethan." She hesitated before answering. "Emma, and this is Lily." Lily peeked shyly from under her hat and offered the man a tiny smile. Max rested loyally at her feet, sensing the tension fading. As the plane began to taxi, Emma leaned back, exhaustion washing over her. She hadn't expected kindness from anyone, not after all the doors that had slammed in her face, not after the quiet stares of pity she'd grown used to. But this man, Ethan, had stepped in without hesitation. There was something about him. Something guarded, sad. She couldn't quite place it, but it struck a chord deep inside her. As the plane lifted into the sky, Emma gazed out the window, her fingers gently brushing Lily's soft curls. The child had already drifted into sleep. Max snuggled close. Emma's eyes flickered across the aisle to Ethan, who now sat staring blankly out the window, lost in thoughts of his own. Neither of them knew it yet, but this flight, this one fleeting journey, would change everything. For Emma, it wasn't just about reaching the destination. It was about hope. About finding something to hold on to in the ruins of a life she never imagined. And for Ethan, well, he carried secrets darker than the clouds gathering above them. In that moment, they were just strangers in the sky. But fate had already begun to weave their paths together, and soon nothing would ever be the same.